The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law. Hey everybody, and welcome to Moon Tower Soccer. This week we review Austin's season-ending loss in Los Angeles, look forward to 2023, and cover a little bit of Austin FC news. And so you are not probably used to me doing the opening. I'm Jeremiah Bentley. Landon Cotham's a little bit under the weather, and I'm happily joined, well, I don't know if happily, but I am joined by Kevin Morris for the show. How you doing, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, I think last time I was on after a bad loss, and I'm really happy that I'm on again after another bad loss.
All right, so we should bring you back on after a win. Is that what we're trying to bring back?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just have such a bubbly personality. You guys want me on whenever we lose. I appreciate it.
No matter what. So let's start. Where did you watch the game? What was your game day experience for this one?
I watched the game with some friends from Pickup Soccer at Mueller. Just watched a little brewery down in Mueller. Small group. It was fun until it wasn't, so about
how long was it fun?
20 minutes into the game.
Say. Oh yeah, none of it was very fun for very long. I went to Hop Squad and watched it with a bunch of people who were ready to blow the roof off the building, and then never had the opportunity to do that, right?
Yeah, I can imagine. Just like a balloon deflating.
Oh, it was so sad. And then the other thing is, so we're recording this on Halloween. And do you have a Halloween tradition, either now or as a child? What's your thing for this holiday?
My wife and I just watch horror movies the entire month, and that's our tradition. And then we used to give out candy, of course, on the night to all the kids in the neighborhood. But in our new neighborhood, there are no trick-or-treaters. So our new tradition is just to leave a bunch of candy by the door that I never give out.
So do you have any recent horror movie recommendations? I've gone through all the classics, right? I watched all the Nightmare on Elm Streets and all the Halloweens leading up to this, and I feel like it's very traditional. But I love horror movies, and I don't find new ones. Do you have something that you would think people should watch now?
Definitely. I mean, the most horrifying thing I've watched recently was LAFC versus Austin FC.
Oh, right. Yeah. If you want to be,
yeah. But Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities on Netflix is really good. I'm not really that into horror movies. It's my wife. I just indulge her. She loves them.
She loves them. All right. So you had to find something to connect with in horror movies, or what you decided it would be.
Yeah. I'm open-minded. I like anything.
That's great. Well, let's talk about your least or most favorite horror movie of recent weeks. So it's the Austin LAFC match. Going into the game, well, I just I read your Twitter feed and love it. So I don't feel like I need to explain the narratives to you, but obviously LAFC was the overwhelming favorite. I think was 75% or something likely that they were going to win, according to everybody. The question that keeps coming up is how hard is it to beat a team 3 times in a year? Which I feel like you read something about, and it's I want to get your perspective on it, other than just basic math. Obviously, it's hard to beat anybody 3 times in a year, but talk to me about how you feel about that.
Lightning doesn't strike thrice, I kept saying. Should be the new saying, I guess. It's, it just seemed, I don't know what the probability of it was, right? I'm sure there are, complicated statistical models that could have told us. But every time that Austin played LAFC was the favorite. And I think for a good reason, I think the national media underrated Austin FC, in the context of the whole league, but they rated LAFC correctly the whole time. LAFC was the best team in the conference, so we beat them twice. We weren't expected to win. So the probability that a team can do that 3 times in one season, it just doesn't seem that likely. That's why I kind of always wanted, even though Galaxy had beaten us twice this season. That was kind of actually why I wanted to play the LA Galaxy. Like I figured if we played them in the conference final, and they had beaten us twice this season, we played them at home, I think we had a pretty good chance. But I just didn't see how we could do it 3 times in one season. If we did, it would have been pretty incredible.
Yeah, it would have been. I mean, this was a dream season anyhow, I think, right? Like, what were your what were your expectations going into this year, and how did this meet or exceed those?
I think we really have to go back and think about where we were to start the season, right? Like just how bad we were last season. And my expectation was, or the standard I wanted us to set was playoffs. If we make the playoffs, that's a successful season. Second year to be a playoff team is good. It's part of a building process that can take many years. So to be second in the regular season and for a time competing for the supporters shield, like a good stretch, and then to also make it to the conference final. I mean, I think that's an incredible season. Fundamentally, we should be really happy with what just happened this season.
Yeah, I think that's probably an opinion that nobody had on Sunday, like right after the match. Yeah. But I feel like today I've seen a lot of that. I've seen a lot of that on Twitter and Reddit. It's just like we should all appreciate it. I think it's really positive and good out of the fan base, because like soccer fans are not necessarily the most rational or like thoughtful people in the world, but like it seems like universally the Austin FC fan base understands like how we outperformed expectations this year, and I kind of love to see that.
Yeah, I think we appreciate how special it is to have a professional team in our city. I think that's part of it. And for me, I mean, I've said this before, I'm like 41, and my entire life I wanted a professional soccer team somewhere nearby. So for me, I genuinely just feel grateful to have this thing and go watch professionals play soccer and have that communal experience. So just on a very fundamental basis with me, I'm always just entirely grateful and just kind of happy to be here. So then to also have the team perform well this season was just incredible.
Yeah, like to be good is a bonus. So going into this, like, what did you expect to see out of Austin, like lineup wise, tactics wise? Like, how do we match up against LAFC? We've obviously done it in 2 different ways with 2 different lineups with success. I mean, some of which is to our benefit, and some of which is to Los Angeles' detriment, like not having Elias Sanchez in the last match. But like, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
Like going into this week or going into yesterday, how did you feel about this, and what do you think you would see out of the match?
I was pretty much with Landon on the expectations for how we would line up. I thought there was a chance that Wolf would start Rigoni, even though I can't quite understand the reasoning behind it. Because I had a feeling that he was wanting to line up the same way as we did against Dallas, because like Dallas, LAFC was going to press us, and we had some really good success beating that press, with Musa's physicality. So that's what I was expecting. The thing that worked really well in that game, or one of the things that worked well, was Musa Jite. And that he was kind of the key part of it. I don't think Finley or Rigoni really played themselves into the starting lineup. And so I would have just kept Finley because the one thing with when a team is pressing like that, the one thing that you need is an outlet. And one thing that Finley has been very good at all season is staying, off the fullback, and his positional play has been really, really good. And I think that maybe was part of the issue, but we can get into that. So fundamentally, I was just not surprised at all by our lineup. I think after the fact, there were some things that were pretty clear that didn't work out too well about it.
Well, yeah, there's plenty of things that actually didn't work out in many ways. about that. And I guess like number one thing being, I mean, before we get into game action, like the midfield, like LAFC's midfield, just like crushed our midfield.
Yeah, Cifuentes, Acosta, and Ilie, absolutely bossed the game. There's no other way to describe it. But I think that was a tactical thing. I mean, do we want to get
Let's
into
get into
that
it
right
now.
now?
Let's get into it.
Okay, so I mean, the first 10 minutes we played okay, right? I think we had some chances. We had this one outlet pass that found Driussi, headed it down to Gite. The ball ended up playing wide to Fagundes, who hit overlapping Gallagher and almost was a play. And this was like, I can't even remember, it was maybe the fourth minute or something. We had something there. Slowly LAFC started to figure out exactly how to press us. They were, if you watch the first 10 minutes, they were a little bit uncoordinated with the pressing. And then as they figured it out, they just put us in a vice. And that vice was basically, they had the front three press across our line. And then they had Acosta and Cifuentes come up with them. And usually they would shadow Danny or Alex Ring for outlet passes. And Ilie would just kind of hover in the back, ready to vacuum up anything. And so what happened was we weren't able to pass it out of the back, so they wanted to play it long. And here is where I think, in retrospect, doing the same thing that worked against Dallas was maybe not a good idea. I think that Cherundolo and LAFC knew that we were going to do that. I mean, you guys said it on the pod last week. I thought we were going to keep the same lineup and go with the same tactics. And I think LAFC knew it, and they were like, you know what? They're not going to try to beat us with speed across the back line. They're going to use Gite as a focal point if they can't pass it out of the press. And so we're going to put Chiellini, one of the greatest center backs in the world over the past decade plus, and we're just going to have Chiellini mark Gite out of the game. And that's what he did in the first half. If you watch the ball, like, Chiellini just bossed Gite that game. I mean, he's old, but he's big, he's tall, he's strong, and he's really, I can't swear, he's really smart.
It's funny. It's like, I did not realize like how not tall Gite was until watching him against Chiellini. It's like, what is, like, we can't help that. So like you talked about this, I felt the same way. Like early on, we had some space and possession, and then they just like adjusted. They seem to adjust on the fly. Like, is that Cherundolo? Is it like the fact that they have so many players who are just like aware of like movement in the situation? They can do that, but like LAFC seem to adjust on the fly on the field, and the way that Austin usually does it until like we have a break or whatever. Like how does that happen?
That's a good question. I don't know. I feel like it probably was just a lack of coordination on the field. I can't imagine their game plan, all of their prep, they didn't plan how to press. But that being said, it's possible that maybe Ring played deeper than they were expecting, I guess. Either way, there is this shot in the game where it's like the 12th minute, and Mark Dos Santos, the assistant coach for LAFC, is in a very intense conversation with Steve Cherundolo, talking something tactical, and maybe that was what it was, or maybe Carlos Vela, a veteran, one of the best players in the league, who was looking pretty frustrated with the pressing. Maybe he figured it out and just yelled at the guys.
He's like, "We're gonna do this."
Yelled at Acosta and Cifuentes, and is like, "Hey, watch your man." Yeah,
we're gonna do this now. We're done with
that. Yeah.
So at least the first LAFC goal is a Chicho Arango goal off a corner. There was this but it comes out of this like weird moment where Stuver's a little bit outside of his box and over his skis, and like I feel like we were maybe lucky to not have the goal scored earlier than that until it leads up to the corner.
Yeah, LAFC used like their front three were just making these bombing runs across the back line constantly, and their fullbacks or center backs kept pinging it up, and they just came up with the ball. We couldn't handle those runs. It kind of showed the difference between, like, for instance, what Rigoni was doing or Chite. Chite is just kind of standing still in the middle, and they've got Vela going across the back line, Bouanga going across the back line, Arango coming back to make space. They've got all this movement going on in their front three. And then, like, over and over, they just kept getting in on goal. And you have Stuver, it ends up playing pretty high. Like, he keeps challenging. Like, he had this pretty early on, like, this crazy knee save, like, out of the box. I don't know if you remember that. But yeah, so the corner that they scored off of was one of those plays, exactly that. I think it was Bouanga, right?
Who led to that? Yeah, yeah, he was.
Yeah, he got in a really dangerous position and hit the corner, and
then and then Arango's being marked by Gite for some reason.
Yeah, and just totally outsmarted. Yeah, why is Gite marking their striker? I mean, I know he's not the tallest guy in the field, but he's the guy that, of all the guys out there, that you would expect to be the cleverest with his movement in the box. And you can see him just, he kind of just fakes Gite out. Like, he walks casually forward and then suddenly darts for the ball. And, it's not, this is not really elite stuff, but it was enough to trick Gite and get him open for a half second, and he won the ball.
Yeah, so
it scored.
It worked for them. And then so it's at Hop Squad, and we all thought, like, okay, we have them where we want them now, right? We're behind, which is where it's exactly where we need to be. But for the rest of the half, like, were there any more dangerous chances for the rest of the first half? We did not obviously generate anything. I think we generated one shot on the first half, which is not on goal, if I remember right. And then I don't think LAFC got a lot either.
LAFC was, I mean, the weird thing was that all of those runs that they were creating, they were generating shots, but they weren't scoring off of them, right? And actually, if you look at all the goals, none of the goals for LAFC actually came off of the them, like, eviscerating us with our passes.
Although they did,
with their passes.
They did that a lot, but they didn't lead to goals, right?
They didn't lead to goals. They did lead to good opportunities. Like, 2 of the goals came off of corner kicks, right? That's just the way the game is sometimes. It's kind of why I think that we could have stolen a win here, but we can get back to that later. But just to get back to your original point, like, basically after the first 10-15 minutes, we barely had any opportunities, and it was because of what we're talking about. They stifled us with the press, and then they stifled our options out of the back. The other thing there is that if you're in a position like that, we've done this previously where teams would high press us, and we'd manage to scoop the ball out to a fullback who's wide on the wings. And you can do that because there's always an imbalance when people are pressing you, right? Because the keeper, Stuver, is involved in the play, right? So there's usually somewhere on the field, there's an option to hit a pass out. We just couldn't hit those passes, and I think we had some pretty poor movement across the front line as well.
Yeah, and it's like we go to the half down 1-0, and we did not generate a lot, almost any opportunities. And then I think everybody thought about, like, where the substitutions were going to come. And were you looking for subs at halftime? Were you surprised that, like, I feel like we didn't have any ideas and nothing was working, and it was like time to bring in Arruti and Finley and, like, sort of change the way that we play at the half as opposed to waiting in the second half, because I feel like we had no ideas, and it was like, as much time as we could have to try to do something different, we should be able to do that.
I think it's interesting because Chiellini went off at the half too, right? And my biggest thing is actually less with the halftime subs, because I think fundamentally we just needed to play a different style of soccer. I think basically they had us where they wanted us, right? There's not much we can do tactically because we're going to be chasing the lead, which is not the position we want to be away at LAFC. right? If we had managed to keep it 0-0, honestly, I think in a situation like that, when things just aren't working out, when you can't pass out of the press, when you can't hit the long balls, I think we should have just parked the bus. But again, we had to chase that goal, so it's a little hard to park the bus while chasing a goal. So I don't think the halftime subs mattered too much. I mean, Rigoni had his worst half I've ever seen him play, and I watched Rigoni play a lot, as you know. Before he signed with us, it was horrible. He couldn't get on the ball. But I don't think that's entirely him. I think we have to credit LAFC for playing really well. So yeah, the subs didn't surprise me. The thing about Chiellini though, coming off, I actually think in the first like 10 to 15 minutes of the second half, we were playing a little bit more positively and we were getting more chances. And I think a couple of those came from Gite actually getting on the ball. So I almost would have liked to have seen Gite stay on longer. I mean, what did Arruti come on and do?
I know.
Scored a goal.
Yeah. It's so much. It's exactly. The guy was sitting next to me. I was like, oh, finally Arruti's in. And I'm like, or not. Like, does that ball hit Gite's head? I feel like. So what do you? Okay, so that's the second goal here. It's at what is that? Like 62 off Maxi's head. Also off a corner, again, a ball delivered by Vela. My question here is, like, did Maxi think somebody else was going to, like, make contact with the ball? Like, it sort of, like, swerved around and missed a couple people, and then it hit him in the head, and then he, like, collapsed the field as soon as it bounced off of his head, because I felt like he knew what was going to happen. But, like, why was he there? And what were you expecting out of that?
That is just one of those plays that ends up being, it's just one of these weird fluke plays. Like, I don't even think that you can blame it on him other than just like he wasn't ready for the ball. Like, he just misjudged it and it came and he tried to adjust and just did it too late. And that's it. It's one of those plays you just can't read too much into, you know?
It's one of those like fluke things that happens, but it was so. You're talking about the shots, like that was gonna. We did not have the opportunity to have the RSL like 2021. You know, take a shot on goal and take it to penalties, and we definitely didn't there, and we didn't. I don't feel like Austin really changed the way they played. Like past then, like did you expect? I know there's like a risk. There's like an upside and downside to like trying to go super aggressive. Went down 2-0, but you're also in an elimination game where you're down 2-0. It's like, would you have done something different after that goal other than what Austin did?
That's a good question, because I don't know that Austin could have done that much different other than just like throw Cascante forward, you know, and have him be a second striker up there with Arruti and just abandon all hope. But I think that there was still too much time left for that. And also it's away against LAFC. Like, I think if we do that, then the game ends like
5-0 or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I just don't think I think once we reach that stage when we're 2-0 down against LAFC, unless we get lucky, this is a very tough comeback to make, right, for any team. So it's very hard to say like what the tactical adjustments would have been. It's the best team in the league over the course of the season, and they're 18-2 at home. I think they lost twice at home. So it's a tall order to beat them in that case.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That goes back to beating any team 3 times in a season where you're like, oh, this is the best team in the league, and we're behind. What do you have to do to come back? Like, pray. Like, I don't know which other option is.
Well, but we almost had that moment.
Yeah,
because there was the penalty.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's go into that. It's like this is the almost at like 67, 68. There was like a penalty that wasn't a penalty with Diego with a ball in the box. Like, what did you think about that in the moment?
It was, well, first of all, it was a great sequence that got us there, actually. Like, it was a rare, like, good passing sequence. Diego got open. took a slightly bad first touch. And so I think it was his second touch. He's trying to get the ball and win it back. And I can't remember the defender for LAFC, but he stomped on Diego's foot. Obvious penalty. I mean, they're in the box. Diego is going out, like he's leaving the area. He's going backwards at the time, but it doesn't matter.
He was still in the box, right?
Yeah. So it's a penalty. And the interesting thing to me is, so Landon texted us before the podcast saying about this, the penalty, that he didn't think it would. He thought it was not likely to have changed the game, and I completely agree. But I do think that there was a possibility that if we scored this, if it was called correctly, we got a penalty. It's now 2-1. There is like an emotional and motivational aspect that could go into the game. And now we're in a situation where it's like, hey, yeah, let's throw Cascante forward. And if we can nab a goal, like another lucky goal, suddenly we're tied, and we don't deserve to be, but we're tied. And let's see if now, once we're tied, we can park the bus and take them to penalty kicks. I still think that the probable thing is that if we score that penalty, LA still wins. But I don't think you can say that. I don't think that excuses the referee at all. I think it was still like you have to view that non-call isolated as its own thing. It was a horrible decision, and those calls affect games. And so I think it's a big deal that he got it wrong, even if we deserve to lose.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that goes back to the old Josh Wolf statement about goals changing games, right? Like that goal, absolutely. If it comes up to change the games, and it changes the way we play. And I also agree. I think this is maybe a Weeby or Doyle point or whatever. Like, yeah, we're the worst team. We were not the better team on the night, but it gave us the opportunity to steal a game. Maybe we shouldn't have had it, whatever. But that happens a lot, especially that happens in the playoffs in Major League Soccer.
Undeserving teams win all the time from lucky things that happen to them,
Yeah, and that was the thing that should have happened to Austin. So like that can't be the whole. Saw a lot of like posts on Reddit and Twitter about like blaming the whole outcome of the game on that call. That's obviously not the case. But like, could that game have turned on that, and like, could we have won something we never deserved to win because of that contributing to it? Like, absolutely. And I feel like it should have been. And I don't know, once they go to VAR, I don't know how like that doesn't come back, other than it's just like, oh, it's just MLS things. That's what happens. But I think that was the last, absolutely the last moment where like Austin challenged.
Yeah.
And I felt like there was going to be any outcome other than what it ultimately was, right?
Yeah. Once that happened, I mean, yeah, I think at that point, watching live, 2 drinks in, once the penalty wasn't called, I mostly was just chatting with friends about
let's talk about next year.
About whatever, just not the game.
Well, I got excited because like Felipe came in. I'm like, oh, he's gonna come in and kick some people, like start some shit. Like I didn't expect to win, but I felt like there was gonna be a little shit housing going in, which I think he did a little bit of after that. And then like the third goal was just like it's a poke, it was unassisted. It's like a collective failure on behalf of everybody, but I feel like Julio showed like the worst part of Julio things there, but ultimately it didn't matter. Like we were already losing that match.
Yeah, and it was such a fluky, weird goal as well, which again is the weird thing about this game. We got totally dominated, but they only scored one really legitimate goal, for whatever that means. Legitimate's not the best way to say it, but they scored an own goal, and then this goal that was scored off of a random fluky bounce. Also, it was created by Diego going in on a slide tackle on the sideline. So that's why it's unassisted, is because I think Fagundes is the one that hits it, trying to win the ball, and the ball just pops up. Maybe that's why I had crazy spin on it. And then Ruben sees the ball coming. I think he sees Cascante there and just thinks that the ball's trajectory is coming in a certain way that it won't be a problem for Cascante. And then the ball just has that crazy bounce. Cascante's not fast enough to make up for it, and boom, Opoku scores. And such a strange goal.
It was a strange goal, and that was it. There was much sadness in Mudville for the mighty Casey had struck out. For people who read baseball poems. So you were posting these on Twitter. Like, let's talk about these passing maps, both for Austin and LA. Which I realize, like, podcasts are not the best visual medium, but like, talk about that way like Austin connected or didn't, like beyond midfield at all ever.
I mean, we can describe it pretty clearly. So the passing map represents, the volume of the passes between the players, and also their average position on the field. So you're not usually going to have a striker all the way, in goal, because the striker is playing all over the field throughout the game. But in our passing map, we had two guys in total on the other side of the field as an average position. So Gite and Fagundes were the only guys on average across the halfway line. And then the really shocking thing is on this map, Rigoni is completely isolated. Again, also not an advanced position on our half with no passes going to him. I think this might be like a bit of a visual bug with how this software works. I think it just means that he didn't get enough passes to him to register compared to all the other ones, because we know that Rigoni got the ball. But visually, it still demonstrates just how little he did get the ball and just how little he was connecting with his teammates. And then the other thing is Gite only has one line going back to anybody else on the team, and that's Danny Pereira at the 6.
So let's get so it's bad. Is that what we got out of it? It was kind of bad.
Yeah.
So I think we probably all agree that a lot of people were not great in this match. I think Brad Stuver, despite giving up 3 goals, like he had some good saves. He looked really strong, but like who do you felt like looked positive in the match?
I don't think anybody looked positive.
I know. I was like,
I think Diego had probably the best moments for us. I think he's kind of the only guy that was dangerous for us at all in the game. I mean, even Driussi was pretty much snuffed out.
Yeah, I was like looking at the FOTMob ratings, and like Stuver's the only person who's green, which is like a 7 or better. And like Diego and oddly Cascante are the closest to that. So I don't know what that means about the way they rate players, because I did not feel like Julio covered himself in glory. You mentioned Rigoni. Like, do you think it's a different match if Rigoni doesn't start? If Ethan Finley starts, do we see something else, or like was LAFC so on the front foot and so dominant it doesn't matter?
Yeah, I do think that's possible. I mean, I think that maybe with Finley out there, he does a better job of stretching their back line and providing an outlet. So maybe marginally better, and you never know. Like maybe if you perform well at that little margin, that kind of overflows and affects every other part of the game. So maybe. But not really. I don't think it's too likely. I think Finley goes out there, he's just as starved of service as Rigoni is, for the most part. I think maybe we get a couple more outlet passes to him, but they swarm him and snuff out any opportunities that he has as soon as he gets it too.
And then with Driussi, do you feel like he had a bad night, or you think it just LA game planned really well? I feel like LAFC's midfield, like obviously clearly dominated Austin's, which contributed a lot to where where Driussi was or wasn't. But Do you think there's anything else that he could have done to make a difference, or was it just being game planned out of the way the match turned out?
Yeah, I think it was mostly just game planning. What you want from Driussi. So in plan B, our plan B that we switched to when we couldn't pass out of the press anymore, you're wanting with Driussi as like kind of a second striker. I don't really like calling him that, but in that role especially, he's kind of like that. He's playing behind Gite for Gite to kind of win the ball and play off of him, right? And that's how we break out of the press. But if Gite's never winning the ball, then Driussi's never getting the ball in that situation. And if Acosta, Fuentes, and Ilie are snuffing us out when we're trying to pass out of the back, snuffing out Driussi as a passing option, he's not going to get on the ball there either. That's probably why Fagundes was the only guy that was getting any opportunities, because he was an outlet out wide. He was doing an okay job of holding the line there.
Yeah. So it's a bad night all the way around. Is there any other players you want to talk about, or are there other moments you want to talk about before we just like put a pin in this season and talk about next year and maybe try to draw some positives out of this? I mean, I feel like we can talk about that right now. Like, ultimately, nobody expected Austin FC to be, well, I think this is the thing I read from you today too. Nobody expected us to finish second in the West, and then nobody expected us to like make the Western Conference Final. It's like, ultimately, this is a very successful season for this club at our city that we love, and we should probably just like reflect on how good that is.
Yeah.
And not worry too much about like the fact that, I mean, the final is going to be the two best teams in the league playing against each other, right? So like this is a great year.
It was a great year. I think we overperformed expectations, which is awesome. I think that should be celebrated. I don't think that anybody should look down on that, which is part of what's so obnoxious of kind of that other narrative. Like, I think it's awesome when a team outperforms expectations, especially when they do it playing the way that we played. We played a lot of really exciting games. We played really gutsy games. We came back a lot. So fantastic season. But this game certainly revealed, along with especially down the stretch, a lot of places to improve, right? I think that we can see that LA is a deeper team than us, better than us 1-to-1 at a lot of positions. And I think that that's something to aspire to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They've also got a bigger pocketbook than us, which might be relevant at some point. But let's get into the offseason and kind of what it means and what we can expect for Austin after the break. So we're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Hey, everybody. Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Property Group.
This is made possible by Sage Wilson Property Group. So if you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, you should talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Property Group.
I love this. You're doing such a good job, Kevin. I'm so happy for you right now. You're killing it. Like, who doesn't? Like, this market is up, it's down, it's crazy. Who knows? Find Sage Wilson Property Group at sagewilson.com.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education.
You can go to fvf.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case.
And I am the most excited by coming into this with you, Kevin. Let's talk about Manscaped, the best in men's grooming. Their products are precision engineered tools for your family jewels. Join over 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer, 20% off and free shipping with the code Verity at manscaped.com. Are you a manscaper?
I'm not. Apparently,
would you like to be?
Should be?
Would you like to be? Let's talk. Yeah, I got it. Let's talk about the two most important things you can have. One, the Lawnmower 4.0, a full-service man groomer, which features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. And also the Weed Whacker, which can help you trim your nose and ear hair. And the bonus thing I want to add on this one is I don't like to manscape in my own house because I don't want to clog my own drain. So when I travel,
so you go to somebody else's house.
Yeah, exactly. When I travel, I put my Manscaped package in my travel bag, and I go to the Marriott, and I shave all the stuff. It's Marriott's problem and not mine, which I feel like is a good way to do things.
Yeah, I can't say I have the same habit when I travel necessarily, but I agree. It should be the hotel's problem and not your own.
Not your own. If they're not gonna give me linen and cleaning service for 3 days, that's what they're gonna get from me. So you can get 20% off and free shipping using the code Verde at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code Verde. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. All right, so we talked a little bit about, we're back, and we talked a little bit about expectations and reality for Austin. There's no doubt that Austin exceeded everything that people both locally and nationally thought about them. So do you think that Austin is positioned to build on this success, or do you think that this was a little bit of a fluke? They were this good. How do you feel about has Austin laid the foundation for future success, or was this a time and a moment when Driussi carried a whole team on his back and exceeded expectations, and maybe we shouldn't expect this to happen every year?
Well, so I don't think we should expect this to happen every year, but I think for another team, it would be this kind of one-off thing. But we are lucky in that we have a good sporting director and we have a really good coaching staff and head coach who are building up something, who have a really distinct style of play, a really distinct philosophy of play. So I think I only have positive expectations for next season. I don't know if we'll finish second in the West. You can laminate that, I guess. It kind of depends on our off-season signings. But that doesn't. We don't have to be finish just as high this next season as we did this season for next season to be successful too. I think if we see more consistent play, if we see that we don't have to chase games as often, we don't go down early, if we just play in a more consistent way, and we perform really well, then that'll be a good season too.
You mean maybe not breaking the record for wins when down 2-0 is what we should aspire for? I feel like that's probably a good idea. Don't go behind 2-0, and you don't have to worry about breaking the record for teams that go behind 2-0.
Feel like that is indeed a good thing to strive for, to not break that record.
Not break your own. So the finals, we'll cover a little bit. So they're next Saturday, 3 p.m. Central, LAFC versus Philly. And this is something that doesn't happen very often, but it's actually the two best teams in the league throughout the year are going to play in the final. Do you have a feeling about that? Do you have a sense of what we're going to see, what people should expect?
Interestingly, Philly has one of the best defenses in the league, and LAFC has one of the best offenses. Philly had this stretch at the start of the year where they were drawing a lot or winning, I think 1-0 a lot, not really resounding victories. And then they just kind of turned a switch halfway through the year and just started beating on people, all these 6-0 wins. So these are they're the two best teams, and they're two of the most well-rounded teams naturally. So I'm just really curious if we're going to see a really cagey game or if they're both going to go for it. I have a feeling that Philly is going to play very carefully, though. I don't think that Philly is. I think away against LAFC, they're going to be extremely careful. So no, I don't have a feeling. I'm rooting for Philly though. My mom's from Philadelphia, so I always root for Philadelphia when they play.
Yeah, go family. And like Philly's goal differential is 46 on the year, which is insane. So not only
they just smashed people.
Yeah, and they did. They picked up a lot of those, like killing people, like you said, like killing people 6-0 and 5-0, whatever. But I think they're both like. Wait, I think they led the league in scoring and in goals allowed. So they're best. They're the best offensive and defensive team in the league. So maybe they'll be able to beat LA. I don't know. And one of the things, so Austin won, which qualifies. Not that Austin won, but like Philadelphia and LAFC winning qualified Austin for CONCACAF Champions, the Scotiabank CONCACAF Champions League. Like, do you think that's a good thing? There's a lot of tournaments.
I am so worried about this. I think a lot of fans are really excited. My thing is, I don't think that we are good enough to make a deep run in the Champions League and have a good season. So I just kind of struggle to see the benefits for us outside of having some really fun and exciting games at Q2 to start the year. If the deeper we go in CONCACAF Champions League, the bigger effect it's going to have on the rest of our season. And we saw what happened to Seattle this year, a very good team with a really deep academy too. So they've got all these great young players coming up that can fill roles. And because of injuries, partially due to game load, because of the Champions League, a really good team didn't even qualify for the playoffs this year. So my thing is, I want the best regular season for us, and I want us to make a deep CONCACAF Champions League run when we can do it. We can do it.
Yeah. And it seems like next year is the worst year, right? Because we have U.S. Open Cup is again, which obviously Austin did not like make a great run of this year. Then we have Champions League, and then we have the league, and then we have Leagues Cup also. So like, there's a lot of competitions for a team that's not all that deep. So I'm also very worried about that. So it's like a cool thing to be able to say that we did, but I hope that we don't throw a lot of resources into doing that. I think.
Yeah, I just don't want it to mess with our regular season.
Yeah, don't.
To me, that's the priority.
Yeah, I agree too. Like, we're not, like, Austin's not deep enough to worry about that and do anything else. And then the thing we saw is like a group of fans met the team at the airport on the way back, and I wanted to say, like, Greg, our friend and listener, had made because we talked about Maxi and maybe not having the greatest first touch in the game, since his first touch was like a ball off his head into our own goal. It's like he made a sign for him to tell him Maxi that we still loved him, and then he like got Maxi's jersey. Afterwards,
really?
Yeah, which is it was really cool.
Oh, that's great.
And he said it smelled really good. Apparently, Maxi's like a good smelling man, which is the report I got on that at Austin Bergstrom Airport.
I think that's really nice that he did that, though. I mean, that's a nice gesture.
That's what those guys need to hear. And I heard, not surprisingly, like a lot of them were getting off the plane and like kind of grumpy about how things turned out. And you would expect as professional athletes that they would be that way. But it's also cool that fans met them there and showed the city's appreciation for this. And I kind of hope we get a chance to do it in a broader way, because I think we talked about this very early on. Everybody's very happy about how this season turned out and is ready to like make sure that everybody associated with the club knows that, I think.
Yeah. I one thing that's always weird to me about fan discourse, especially on the internet, but also talking about Philly sports, there are fans that'll boo their own players. It's interesting how fans think that their displeasure towards players and letting the players know that is going to improve how they play.
Oh yeah, right.
I don't buy into that at all. I think the more you make a player want to play for you, by showing them you love them as a fan, probably the better they're going to play for you.
Yeah, well, that was the narrative last year, right? Like the whole, like the Austin FC narrative last year was like, why are we cheering for these guys? And it's like if we just booed harder at them, suddenly they would decide to play better, which is very stupid. I think it's like ultimately the outcome.
Yeah, it's. I think for fans who feel powerless to affect their team and the outcomes, it's one way for them to kind of hope that they're able to do so, but just show the guys some love. I think that's great. I think
it is great. So let's get a little bit. We're going to get deeper into this over the next few weeks, but the offseason calendar a little bit is coming up. So the MLS trade window opens on November 7th. The expansion draft is on November 11th, and Austin will. So St. Louis City, all in caps. I think SC is going to be the team selecting it. Austin will not have a player that can be selected, right? Because Mackenzie Gaines went to Charlotte, I think. Is that right?
Oh, I'm actually not sure. So if you had a player in the previous draft, I think if you're not eligible on the next time?
Yeah, I think if you had a player in the previous draft, you get to sit that out. So because Mackenzie Gaines went to Charlotte, Austin doesn't have to worry about losing anybody to that.
Oh, that's great. I actually didn't know that.
And then November 14th, there's the deadline for player option declines. 16th is the open of free agency, and the December 21st is 2023 Super Draft. Austin will not be selecting nearly as highly as we have in the past, but we seem to have done a pretty good job in the Super Draft in the first 2 years. Like, how do you feel about how Austin's done?
Oh, we've done, really well in the Super Draft. I'm one of those people that thinks the Super Draft is really useful. It's a way to get really good, cheap prospects, especially defensive prospects. Like a lot of good center backs come out of the Super Draft. You had a guy like Danny Pereira. Like that's an incredible draft pick. So the thing that's interesting about the Super Draft is a lot of teams don't care about it. And so it's possible to trade for some pretty good spots and steal some players. And they're happy to do it because they just don't value the draft. Teams with academies, for instance, with really developed academies just aren't going to bother with the Super Draft. So we still have an opportunity. We could put together some trade and for a little allocation money or something and trade up and maybe grab somebody.
So how do you feel about Kip Keller as a Super Draft pick? Like everybody was happy for him to fall to us. I feel like he's developed kind of in line with what you expect out of a Super Draft guy who had a lot of potential, but I feel like there's also a lot of people who were disappointed to not see more of him. But I think he's like exactly what you expect, like what you should expect as a good team out of a player that may have a lot of potential in the Super Draft.
Yeah, especially playing at that position, like that's not a position where you can just throw him on very often and just not have to worry too much if he messes up. That first game against LAFC, it was his play that they called the penalty on, right? And it was a pretty bad challenge, like pretty reckless challenge. So it's not surprising he didn't get more minutes. I'm a little disappointed because I see a lot of potential in him. I think he's a really smart player. His passing is good. He's just a little rash with his tackling, and his positioning sometimes can be questionable. So the main thing to me is so next season we're going to have an MLS Next Pro team. Are we going to does Wolf see enough opportunities for Keller to play with the first team? Because if not, he needs to go play with that team. Like he needs minutes is the main thing. Either that or a loan to a USL team, something.
Yeah, that's very true. I feel we go and make the Walker Zimmerman comparison. Like Walker Zimmerman, I think it was his third year before he saw like significant minutes in Dallas, and I think he played about the same amount of minutes as Kip did in the first year. So it'd be good for Kip to have like a place to develop and play and make a difference. I agree with that. And so when it comes to free agency, so as of the end of July, our players who are going to be free agents, let's go through them all. And I'm going to ask you like who you want to keep or who you're happy to see go. Like in order of how I have them posted, alphabetical, and also how they are in the show outline. So Danny Houston.
Happy to see go.
Happy to see him go. On $716,000, absolutely happy to see him go.
Too much money. Give that money to Diego.
Yes, we should do that. Okay, Hector Jimenez.
Let him go.
Let him go.
He's getting up there in age. And I think this season, Nick Lena just played him out of the starting lineup.
He didn't hardly play at all this year, right? Like you think you could get somebody who's different. Like he was kind of a team dad in the first year, and I feel like we've also found guys who can like fill that slot and replace him. So I agree with that. All right, Felipe.
Oh man, Felipe is so cheap. Just keep him on.
And he's
like, I mean, if he's willing to keep that same salary, it's like 84,000.
Yeah, that's crazy
like for a professional soccer player. That's like nothing.
That's crazy. I agree with that. All right, I think the next one, I do believe that we pick up the option, and I don't think this is still true. But Brad Stuver.
Yeah, I think Brad Stuver we would want to keep.
You may, yeah, that guy seems okay.
I'm gonna make that gutsy call right there. Yeah,
it's a tough one. This one is he makes a lot of money, but Andrew Tarbell.
Yeah, I would it's hard to say, right? Because we don't know how good Damian Loss is as a backup. So we need a backup keeper. And the total amount that we're spending on that position there is not crazy. It's like $500K for the position total. So if we lose Tarbell, who is our backup? If Damian Loss could do it, if they've seen enough in training that they think he's good enough, then sure, he can be our backup. But then we also need that third keeper as well. So is that Pulisic? I don't know. But that's like the difficult part of that decision. But the other thing is like Tarbell probably wants to go, so he probably doesn't want the club to pick up the option.
Yeah, he probably wants to play, right? I mean, I assume at this point in his career, he believes that he needs significant game time, and he's obviously not going to get it here. So I guess to take this into a close, like where would you prioritize off-season spending, given where we are?
So in terms of like a group of positions, defense, in terms of individual positions, specifically striker and right center back are the two positions I think are the most in need of change.
So, okay. So on the fullbacks, which of our fullbacks do you most want to replace?
I don't know that I really want to replace either of them. I like them both.
They don't listen. It's fine. I mean, John Gallagher might, but don't let that like sway you.
Yeah. So, man, that's a tough one. I would say Lima probably over Gallagher. I really believe so. Gallagher's offensive contributions weren't that good this season for a left back in a system that's designed for the fullbacks to get forward and contribute really meaningfully in the attack. But his side was the most dangerous with Diego and Driussi out there, and I think that Gallagher's speed and his ability to cover allowed that side to be a lot more open and just provided more cover for Fernandez and Driussi out there. So I would keep Gallagher. Lima, things never fully clicked that well on that side. I think Finley and Lima did okay together. I think Lima and Rigoni do not click at all. I don't see them really combining meaningfully. I think I talked about this on the last show when we talked about Rigoni. He needs somebody. He's cutting in all the time on his left foot. He needs a fullback that's going to overlap and take that wide position. And Lima doesn't really like to do that. Lima likes to cut it, to go inside a lot. That's where he takes all of his 10,000 shots every season. It's like from that position on that inside channel. So it's like, but the thing is with those two positions, those are two of the cheapest positions on the team. So I think probably have to do a deep dive at some point and try to figure out where we're spending money and how we're getting like how close we are to the salary cap and all that. So the thing is with those two positions, if you're at risk of going over the salary cap, you could keep those two positions because they're like the highest value for what you pay on the field. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you have to find. That's the thing with the salary cap league. It's like you have to find a value somewhere. You have to figure out what the best way you can deploy it is. But like, and to your point on like the 9, which is I think probably the position that everybody agrees we need to fill. Like Danny Houston's contract opens up a lot of opportunity, and I think Maxey was so good early in the year, and then he just had a Maxey year, right? He was like really good early on.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden in the last 10 games, he scored no goals. He just disappeared. And it's like, you just have to kind of know that's what you're going to get out of him, which like Austin needs something better about. Like, do you think, I mean, GTA seems like a multi-year project. I don't feel like you can rely on him even next year to like step in and like anchor that position. I don't know. Do you have a different opinion on that?
Not really. There were moments in some of the games towards the end of the season where Gite really combined well with Driussi and seemed to be really active moving off the ball. The thing is that he's inconsistent, and then also a lot of times he still does not read plays and move that well. There's a play in the game on Sunday where Driussi had the ball, he's running at goal, and Gite reads the run a little bit too late. And by the time he sees it and starts to run, no pass is available. There's probably a half dozen of those that happen every game with Gite. So the hope was that he'd just kind of learn that and get better at it. I don't know, he's still too inconsistent there. And then Urruti is, the reality is, when we talk about XG and actual goals, and all of that, I think that Urruti is the one position on the team where that really was a problem that kind of papered up some bigger issues. Urruti was one of the guys going way over his XG, right? So that means that Urruti is hitting some golazzos, right? Like some worldies. And he couldn't keep that up. And so that's why he dried out at the end of the season. Remember that goal against San Jose where it was like from like 30, 35 yards out?
Yeah, it was probably the longest goal. I think it was the longest goal that Austin scored was that one. And it's just, yeah, right. I agree with that. It's such a fortunate chance. So I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be an interesting offseason. And to your point, like, it all comes down to how much money do we have left to like to do these things and like try to make a difference. And I don't know what that is. And Sean Rubio knows, he will never tell us. So there's also that.
I think we can probably figure some things out. It'll just need more research than was put into this show.
Absolutely. Is there anybody else you want to talk about before we close it out?
I don't think so. We already said it. Amazing season. Everybody should feel. Well, I can't tell you how to feel, but I feel really proud and happy.
No, you could tell everybody how to feel. You should feel happy. Like if you're disappointed about how the season turned out, then there's something wrong with you. Like
come talk to me. If you're disappointed, we need to have a conversation.
Absolutely. All right. Let's remember everybody to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. It helps our grow our audience and expose more people to Austin FC. If you want to continue the soccer conversation, check us out on Twitter. Poor Landon, whose mouth doesn't work anymore, at LVHero87. Me at JBentleyATX_ATX. And Kevin, you talk about things. What do you talk about on Twitter?
What do I talk about on Twitter? Just stupid soccer stuff. Just super. And you can find me at Soccer Alt.
And you're going to be like really into super stupid soccer stuff rolling into the World Cup, right?
Yeah, man, I need a break because the World Cup is going to ruin me. So maybe I won't be tweeting as much stupid soccer stuff for the next couple of weeks. But then once the World Cup starts, I won't be able to help myself.
I love it. I can't wait for it. So please also sign up for the Patreon, visit the Striker website, which has been really good this week because Striker is both in Austin and LA. So there's the LA writer that will be covering the final. You can get 30% off on a discount at Moontower22, capital M, Moontower22. We'll be back next week with a new episode of Moontower Soccer. Hopefully Landon will be back. We're going to take a more comprehensive look back at the season and cover all the other off-FC news that comes up. Until then, I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
And I'm Kevin Morris.
And I will catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Think for nothing, you never.
La gente
Oh my God.